What's up guys, I'm Laura from Reading in Bed, and today I'm doing a video inspired by Steve Donahue. So a couple days ago he reviewed the May 5th edition of the New York Times book review, which I have right here. So I have to do this today or it's going to be out of date. Steve's video is 37 minutes long. I encourage you to watch it because of course he's bringing his perspective as a professional reviewer and of someone who's read every book. So not only can he comment on, why certain books are included and how they choose who's going to review them, but he can actually talk about a lot of the books because he's already read them. I'm going to bring you the perspective of a much more humble reader, so maybe those of you out there who, like me, don't know everything about every new book can decide if this is something for you. It's a decision I'm trying to make right now because I'm at the end of a 12-week promotional subscription to the New York Times where I was paying just under $19 Canadian for just the Sunday edition, which takes me all week to read. And now it's just kind of jumped up to almost $40 Canadian a month, which is still better than the newsstand price up here, which is $13 per issue. And the other thing about being subscribed to the New York Times in Canada, or at least in Edmonton, is that you don't get it till Monday. I bet they get it on Sunday in Toronto. But anyways, let's dive in. Let's take a look through. Now, first of all, I am almost never interested in whatever book is on the cover, and this is really no exception. The book on the cover is The Flight Portfolio by Julie Oringer, and it's reviewed by Cynthia Ozick. None of that means anything to me. It seems to be historical fiction about World War II and about specifically about Jewish people trying and sometimes failing to, get out of Europe while they still could. And it focuses on one person in particular who's a real person. And this reviewer had a real problem with that, and it was very odd. They say, this isn't really what this person would have been like, and it's not right to sort of fictionalize people who were associated with the Holocaust because of Holocaust deniers. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me, so I didn't really enjoy that review. And honestly, when I do read this, I often skip past, because often the book on the cover is something to do with American politics or what have you, so I just go right in. I don't really look at the table of contents. I just kind of start flipping through. So they've got kind of the new and noteworthy column. I don't always pay a ton of attention to that, but I do read the letters. So the letters is usually the first thing I end up reading, and in this issue almost all of them are commenting on a review of a book about climate change. So we really run the gamut here, from climate change deniers, of which Steve did a wonderful dramatic reading of this long letter from a climate change denier, and you should just go watch him do it. For me, this was funny because one of the letters starts complaining about carbon taxes, and I'm like, this is not what I subscribe to the New York Times for. If I want to hear people bitching about carbon tax and pipelines and stuff, I'll read my local paper. And lo and behold, this letter writer is from Calgary, Alberta, so yeah, Alberta represent, I guess. So yeah, the letters are often just kind of entertaining. They do a good job of picking a few different perspectives on climate change. And then after the letters, there's always the by the book. So those of you on BookTube should be somewhat familiar with the by the book column because there was a very popular tag based on it a couple of years ago now. But the idea is they talk to a celebrity author, usually emphasis on the celebrity more so than the author, and they ask them a bunch of questions like what books are on your nightstand and what's the last great book you read. So in this edition, the author is Ruth Reichel, and she's just come out with a book called Save Me the Plums. So she is a food writer, and she does talk a lot about other food writers and other, if you're interested in that, you'll probably get some recommendations. But I had to laugh because when they ask her what was the last great book you read, she says, "I'm not sure what makes a book great, but I just reread Infinite Jest, and as always, David Foster Wallace blew me away." Power move to not only mention Infinite Jest, but just, slide in there that you're rereading it. So you go, Ruth Reichel. Okay, so moving on, we finally get into some of the sort of smaller standalone reviews. The first one is for a book called The Spectators. I didn't like this review, and that doesn't mean that I disagreed with it. I just didn't like how it was written. I'll read you the first paragraph so you can see what I mean. Okay, so it starts, "I was going to say that the last good novel about a media personality was Stanley Elkin's The Dick Gibson Show, the fabulous 1971 tale of a motor-mouthed radio host. But then I remembered that the last good novel about a movie star was Brock Brower's The Late Great Creature, published in, well, what do you know, 1971. So I really don't like the folksy, colloquial tone, even though I'm someone who writes about books often in that kind of tone, but then I'm writing on my blog, which is read by 12 people and not monetized. So something rubbed me the wrong way about this, and I know that he's probably trying to match the satirical tone of the novel he's talking about, but it just, like, right from the get-go, that was the opening sentence, and I was just like, meh, this is not going to interest me, and it didn't. The novel's, yeah, it's about a talk show host and a shooting, and just, you know, not into it at all. But then on the facing page, there is a review of a book called Henry Himself by Stuart Onan. This was a very short review. It's very sort of like quiet and contemplative in tone, and it sounds like the book is that way too. So this to me is more of a match kind of between the tone of the book and the tone of the review, and in just a couple of paragraphs it gives me an idea of what kind of book it is and what the author's trying to accomplish and how successful they were at doing that, rather than just sort of showing off or trying to be funny. And that's what I'm looking for in a professional book review. So, moving on, then we've got a review of Firefighting, the Financial Crisis and Its Lessons. And, you know, like just everything from the title to the picture of these, you know, men in suits and if I wasn't doing this video, there was no way I would have read this review, and honestly, I started skimming towards the end. It's about the 2008 financial crisis. Apparently, the guy who is reviewing it, Paul Krugman, is a big deal. Steve knew him, I don't. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff in here that I just flip right past. The review, like, because I read it, it was actually okay. It was informative. It's the kind of review that makes me think, okay, good, now I don't need to read the book. Not that I was going to anyway. And then we get into a crime column. So again, normally I would just skip right over it, and I sort of did skip over most of it because I just don't read crime. So there's that. Now, okay, so now we're getting into two facing pages of kind of longer, meatier reviews. The first one is a review of So Much Longing in So Little Space, The Art of Edvard Munch by Karl Ove Knausgaard. The review is written by Siri Hustvedt, so we've got a lot of Norwegian stuff going on here. And this was my favorite review in the whole issue. Even though I've never read Knausgaard, I don't read a lot of art books, I'll probably never read this book, but the review is so good because it's both a very positive review overall, but at the same time it's a brutal takedown. And it's so funny and so good, and but fair. Like, it's not her taking little, you know, snarky shots at anything. It's like she really lays out this book's strengths and then goes right after its weaknesses at the end. I think Steve probably read the, you know, the snarkiest quotes, but yeah, so where is it? Yeah, like this one line, its many strengths do not lie in its intellectual rigor. Like that just, and that's in a paragraph where the last paragraph where she really starts taking it down. But this, yeah, this is kind of like what I want in a longer review. And again, it doesn't matter if I'm interested in the book or not. Like, the review itself is so well written and so funny and so insightful. It tells me something about the subject of the book. It tells me about art writing. It tells me about Knausgaard. And honestly, it made me want to read something by Siri Hustvedt, if anything else. So it says down here, her 7th novel, Memories of the Future, was published in March, so I might check that out. And then on the facing page, we've got a review of a book called The Other Americans by Leila Lalami, and the reviewer is Madeline Tien. I didn't like this review at all. I found it very cold and like academic, sort of. Like, it was all about how the book is structured, which is fine. Like, that's something I may want to know about. But unlike some of the other reviews I liked, it didn't really tell me whether I might like it, whether Madeline Tien liked it, whether it was very successful. And yeah, just, it was boring. Like, after reading that Siri Hustvedt review, which was like a very exciting read, this review was very boring to me. The most exciting part of this review was the byline. As it says, Madeline Tien's most recent novel is Do Not Say We Have Nothing. She is a professor of English at Brooklyn College. So did she move to the States? Is she no longer at the University of British Columbia? Because she was a central figure in the whole UBC accountable scandal, which I'm sure like maybe 2 of you have heard of or care about. But now I'm like, ooh, what's going on with Madeline Tien? Okay, so on the next pages, we've got a review of a posthumous Oliver Sacks book. This was a pretty good review. Like, I don't know a lot about Oliver Sacks or his work, but the review is more about, like, the ethics of writing about medical cases. So it was interesting. It was a good review, though not like super of interest to me. I like the review on the facing page a lot more. It's a review of two books. They're both sort of Russian. The title of the review is The Russian Mystique. So really what this is an essay about when authors sort of add a little bit of Russianness, or really it could be any like ethnic background, just to sort of add flavor to what might otherwise, and this reviewer suggests, are kind of bland and boring stories. So I really like this for being both sort of a double review and a comment on like a trend in literature right now, and it was a good read, and I like the illustration that they have with it too. Okay, moving on. Like there's a lot in here, so I'm not going to comment like on every single thing. For example, this review of Martin Buber, A Life of Faith and Dissent, another one that I would totally skip over, and I didn't finish it. I just I'm really just not interested in the work and legacy of the Jewish thinker and theologian Martin Buber. Like, that's, nope. The facing review is a short one. This is a review of Homeland by Fernando Aramburu. It's reviewed by Jennifer Croft. So she is the translator of Flights by Olga Tokarczuk that won the Man Booker International Prize last year. So that made me interested. And this is another, like, just really short, just a couple hundred words. But she gets across everything I want in a review, tells me what the book is about, tells me if it was successful and what it was trying to do. She says no. It also, in the byline, told me that Jennifer Croft has a novel coming out in September called Homesick, so I'm going to look forward to that one. And it's funny, just to kind of comment on the ads, because, you know, this page is more ad than review. You can see the ad is for a luxury Antarctic cruise, and one of the funny things about subscribing to the New York Times is that all the ads are either aimed at seniors, like hearing aids and stuff, or they're like obscenely luxurious things that I could never afford in a million years. Fur coats, jewelry, and cruises, primarily. So anyways, okay, so now we're getting to the end of the standalone reviews. There's one here for How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy by Jenny Odell. I had this on hold at the library, and I'm really excited to read it, so I was glad to see a review of it here. It's a short review, but it does give me an idea what to expect, which wasn't quite what I got out of just reading a short synopsis. The review tells me that this is going to be more of like a collection or a collage of different materials that Jenny Odell has pulled to like kind of say something about social media and using our phones. I'm interested in all of that right now due to my social media diet. I'm back on Twitter, but actually Jenny Odell is on Twitter too, and she's fairly active, so maybe we have come to the same conclusion that we can quit everything except Twitter, well, and YouTube, I guess. And then across from that is a review of The Lost Gutenberg, the astounding story of one book's 500-year odyssey. This was an interesting review too. Something I don't know a lot about the various existing copies of the Gutenberg Bible, and one in particular, what's happened to it, who's bought it, who sold it. That was interesting. So we're kind of at the end. Well, there's a couple more. Then there's, some reviews of like political and historical stuff, which again, there is an essay. So the essay here is sort of just a look at books about dogs, and it makes like a weird assertion that until recently, like until this millennium, no one's written about the interior lives of dogs, which Steve pointed out immediately is like not true at all. But I think the authors were confused, or maybe Steve was confused. Like, I think what they're saying is that until this millennium, no one had done scientific studies of a type like where, you do an MRI on a dog or something, and that proves certain things. So like, to me, that assertion was, not like super problematic. But some of the other ones were, like, they talk about how, the way we see dogs now is the way people used to see children in the 19th century, as, sort of like not fully human and just here to serve their adult masters and stuff. I don't like that one. I can see what they're saying, but it was a little, So this essay was like not great. It was a little weak, to be honest. Yeah, then there's some reviews I don't care about. There's a nice little feature on children's books, which this one focuses on some middle grade novels. So that was great because my kids are kind of at the age where they can get into that. And they chose 3 like very unusual middle grade novels. They're not like the usual sort of action adventure-y kind of story. They're more like quieter, introspective books for middle grade readers. So that was cool. Then we get into the bestseller lists. You know, if you're interested in that, that's there. A little blurb on Sally Rooney. You know, how can we have any kind of books publication without mentioning her? And then at the end, there's always the short list. So just kind of quick reviews on a theme, and the theme is artificial intelligence this time. Those were, you know, again, like not super of interest to me. So I guess like overall, it sounds like there was a lot in here that I was like, meh, don't care. But the couple of reviews in here that I did like, in particular, the Siri has fed one, were good enough that, yeah, I mean, I want to keep subscribing and I want to keep getting this. There's just, yeah, I mean, there is, the quality varies, but when the quality is there, it's really great. And there is something special. You know me, I'm not like a purist when it comes to print books or anything, but there is something special about having it in print and like carrying it with me in my purse and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll probably stay subscribed. I would love to hear from you guys. Like, do you pick up the New York Times on the newsstand? Do you subscribe? Do you like their reviews? Do you like the kind of coverage they give to books? So let me know in the comments. And go and watch Steve's video. It's at least twice as long as this one, but it's worth it. Okay, thanks for watching.